I'll never forget the day the judge looked me in the eye and said the words that shattered me, custody awarded to the grandmother. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, my body went cold, and it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. They weren't just words. They were a sentence, a declaration that I was no longer fit to be my own son's mother. My Daniel. My baby. How did I get here? How does a woman carry her child, sacrifice everything, and still lose him, not to the state, not to a stranger, but to her own mother-in-law? Let me take you back. After my divorce, life wasn't easy. I worked late shifts, counted pennies at the grocery store, and sometimes stretched a pack of noodles into 3 meals. But every night when Daniel curled up beside me, whispering, "Good night, Mommy," I knew I was enough. At least, I thought I was. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was always around. At first, I was grateful. She babysat when I worked late, dropped off bags of groceries, and told everyone, "I'm just helping out." But little by little, her help felt more like judgment. She'd say things like, "Daniel eats better when he's with me," or "Children need stability, Elena, do you really think you can give him that?" I tried to brush it off, but the words stayed with me. One evening, I went to pick Daniel up from her house. I walked in just in time to hear her say, "Come to Mommy, sweetheart." And Daniel, my Daniel, ran straight into her arms. I laughed like it was a silly slip, but inside, my heart cracked. Still, I convinced myself she meant well. Maybe she was just trying to fill the space her son, Daniel's father, had left behind. But then, everything changed. One morning, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find a man in a suit holding a thick envelope. When I tore it open, my hands shook. My knees nearly gave out. Custody papers. Margaret was suing me for full custody of Daniel. And the words on that paper said it all. She was claiming I was an unfit mother. What evidence could a grandmother possibly use against her daughter-in-law, and how could a judge even consider it? When I first held those papers in my hands, I laughed through my tears. I told myself there was no way a judge would take my son from me. I wasn't perfect, but I was his mother. Surely, that had to mean something, right? But then I read further. The accusations, they broke me. Margaret had painted me as reckless, unstable, and incapable of caring for Daniel. She dug into every scar of my past. Times I'd been late on rent. Times my depression kept me in bed. Even the one night years ago when I called my sister in tears, asking her to watch Daniel because I couldn't stop crying. Things I thought were private, things I thought were behind me, were now evidence. She even claimed I left Daniel alone, which was a lie. But lies written in legal ink suddenly looked like truth. The weeks before the hearing were a blur of fear and preparation. I hired a lawyer I couldn't really afford, sat through meetings that felt like interrogations, and tried to hold myself together while Daniel tugged at my shirt asking, "Mommy, why are you sad?" I wanted to tell him everything. But how do you explain to a child that someone he loves is trying to take him away from you? Every visit to Margaret's house became tense. I'd arrived to find Daniel surrounded by toys I could never afford, eating meals that looked like feasts compared to my kitchen table. And she'd stand there with a smile that wasn't kind, it was triumphant. Like she already knew how this story would end. And here's the part that still makes my chest ache. Daniel started asking if he could stay at Grandma's a little longer. He didn't understand what was happening, but he felt the shift. Children always do. I can't tell you how many nights I sat on my bed, clutching his pajamas to my face, praying I wouldn't lose him. And before I go further, before I tell you how it all unfolded, let me pause and ask you, if you've ever felt the system can be unfair, if you've ever believed in fighting for what's right, then stay with me. And please, subscribe right now. Because this story, it only gets heavier from here, and I want you to hear it all. Back to the case. The first court date was like stepping into a nightmare. Margaret sat there in her pressed suit, surrounded by her lawyer and her friends from church, who nodded as if she were a saint. And me? I felt like the defendant in a crime I hadn't committed. I kept telling myself, the truth will protect me. But as testimony after testimony was read, I realized the truth wasn't enough. Margaret had turned my struggles into weapons. And the more she spoke, the more the courtroom began to lean in her favor. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my son was called to speak. What Daniel said on that stand, it changed everything. The day my son took the stand, my whole body trembled. He was just a little boy, too young to even understand why strangers in black robes and polished shoes were staring at him. I wanted to run to him, scoop him up, and tell them all to leave him out of this. But I couldn't. I had to sit there, frozen, as Margaret's lawyer guided him gently to the witness chair. "Do you like living with Grandma?" he asked. Daniel swung his legs nervously. "Yes." "And why's that?" "Because she has toys. And cookies. And I don't have to be alone." Alone. That word cut me like a knife. I'd never abandoned him. Never. But those nights when work stretched late, when exhaustion kept me from playing, when I cried behind the bathroom door, he remembered. Children always remember. When it was my lawyer's turn, she asked him, "Daniel, do you love your mommy?" His little eyes lit up. "Yes. She reads me stories. She hugs me when I'm scared." Tears blurred my vision. In that moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, that love would be enough. But courtrooms aren't built on love. They're built on evidence, records, testimonies. Margaret's lawyer stood again, calm and cutting. He pulled out bills I'd paid late, medical notes about my depression, even screenshots of texts I'd sent years ago when I begged for help. He turned my cries for support into proof of weakness. And when my turn came to testify, I poured out my soul. I told them how I'd sacrificed, how I'd worked 2 jobs, how Daniel was my reason for living. My voice cracked, my hands shook, but I thought honesty would shine brighter than her accusations. Then Margaret took the stand. She spoke with the composure of someone rehearsed. She painted herself as the savior, the one who could provide stability, routine, and a real home. She even managed to cry, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief as she said, "I just want what's best for him." The jury nodded. The judge listened closely. And I felt the ground tilting beneath me. I kept glancing at Daniel, who sat fidgeting in the corner. Every time our eyes met, I mouthed, "I love you." He mouthed it back. But love felt powerless against the machine grinding me down. Hours passed. Witnesses came and went. Every story of me struggling as a single mom became another nail in the coffin of my case. By the end of the day, my heart was raw. My body felt hollow. But I still held on to one thing, hope. Because tomorrow, the judge would announce the decision. And even though everything pointed against me, I told myself the truth couldn't be denied. I told myself no court in the world would rip a child from his mother. But I was wrong. The next morning, the judge's ruling would not just change my life, it would redefine who my son called mom. The morning of the verdict, I barely slept. My stomach twisted, my hands shook, and every breath felt heavy. I held on to Daniel's little sweater as if clinging to him would somehow protect me from what was coming. When the judge walked in, the entire courtroom went silent. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. He shuffled his papers, cleared his throat, and then, he said the words that ripped my world apart. "Custody is awarded to the grandmother." For a moment, everything around me disappeared. I didn't hear the shuffle of feet or the whispers of the gallery. All I heard was the echo of those words. I turned to look at Daniel. His face was confused, searching mine for answers. I wanted to run to him, to scream, to fight, but the bailiff's hand on my shoulder kept me in my seat. Margaret reached for him. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking back to me, and then, he went into her arms. The sight shattered me. I walked out of that courtroom with nothing but visitation rights, a broken heart, and the crushing weight of failure pressing down on me. How do you explain to your child that you lost, not because you didn't love him, but because the system didn't see your love as enough? That night, I sat on my bed staring at the papers, my tears staining the ink. For the first time in my life, I felt powerless. But deep down, I knew one thing: this fight wasn't over. Because you don't just walk away when it's your child. You don't surrender when love is on the line. And as I closed my eyes, I made myself a promise: I would appeal. I would fight. And one day, I would bring my son back home. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the beginning. Would an appeal give me another chance, or would the system bury me deeper? If you want to know what happened next, if the appeal brought justice or more heartbreak, make sure you hit subscribe right now. Because the next chapter of my story will shock you even more than this one.